What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Horror, this is Ethan Horror, and today we are going to be going through my top 10 standalone horror movies. And basically, to sum up what a standalone horror movie is, it's a horror movie without any sequels. So there are very few to pick from, but basically I'll be disqualifying any movie that has a sequel, remake, prequel, any part of a franchise. If there's only one movie in that franchise, it counts, but if there's anything else, it does not. Fan films don't count. Sequels that are planned that haven't happened yet also don't count. But before we get into that, we have two things to go over, actually. I'll do the advent calendar afterward. I'll probably be showing you guys my Halloween costume once it all arrives, but the first parts of it have arrived, so I'm going to have you guys try to guess what I'm being for Halloween. First part is this belt. It's a black belt, just a normal buckle, so that part has arrived, and I got this little metal sheriff badge, so let's see if you guys can guess what I'm going to be for Halloween. I won't be showing you when the rest of it comes, but advent calendar. So far, we have got... So if you want to see those, go back to the rest of my videos. Got a little box open. We are on day number 7 of my Halloween Spooktacular, where I'm going to release a video every day between October 1st and Friday the 13th. So let's open up number 7. And remember, I cannot look at it, because if I look at it, I can see through the blind bag, and I want it to be a surprise for myself as well. So I'm going to maintain eye contact, open it up. Oh, it actually feels rather big. Okay, we got another Pennywise. 2017 Pennywise. I actually have like 4 Funko Pops of the full size of the normal Pennywise over there, but I'll take a mini one. He's got a little balloon. I would have preferred if they only gave me, like, I guess he's kind of on the box too, so. But I would have preferred if they gave me just one of the Pennywises, because I would have preferred to have more unique characters, like we've gotten that Beetlejuice, we haven't gotten the Nun, or Jason, or Freddy, or Lydia Dietz, or any of the, like, ones on the box, pretty much. Some of those ones are actually cool, so I'd kind of like to get some of those, but, you know, we knew we were going to get Pennywise, but I would have preferred if they just put in the 1991 or just put in the 2017 one, but this is pretty cool, so I'll take that.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! Yes. Yes, God.
But let's get into these horror movies that have no sequels, with number 10, Us. Now, I did just talk about this movie in yesterday's video, but I guess I could talk about it again. I really loved this one. It's definitely my favorite of Jordan Peele's movies, because I think it's the most scary and the least confusing, because Nope, as much as it's great, it's pretty confusing, and it takes you maybe a couple watches to figure out what the heck is even going on. But Us takes you one watch to figure out that it's about identity theft, and it's actually a pretty good movie with, like, a decent story. The ending is a little bit weak, but otherwise, I think this is a great horror movie, and it's definitely one of my favorites. In at number 9, I have the horror comedy Freaky. Now, I know that not a lot of people love this movie, but for some reason, I watched it and I fell in love. Maybe it's the director, oh my god, what's his name? That's gonna kill me. The director of this movie, who also did the Happy Death Day movies and a bunch of the Paranormal Activity sequels. I absolutely adore him, and he's taking another horror spin on a classic movie. Like, he did Groundhog's Day with Happy Death Day, and he's doing Freaky Friday with Freaky. It was actually originally supposed to be called Freaky Friday the 13th, but the Disney movie Freaky Friday already exists, so got a copyright. But I think it's a great horror twist. I mean, this is exactly how you should do it. It's a relatively basic movie, but I've always loved it. I thought it was funny, and Vince Vaughn does a great job, and so does Catherine Newton. But the one reason that I have this on here is because I wasn't really amazed with Happy Death Day. I mean, I liked it, but it was rated PG-13, and this is what he can do with rated R levels of gore. There are some graphic kills, and they're amazing. Coming in at number 8, I have As Above, So Below. Now I can get into this again. I don't know if I've actually ever talked about this movie on my channel. I've never talked about As Above, So Below. Wow, that's sad. Because this is the first horror movie I ever watched. Now, you've probably seen that I've credited Freddy vs. Jason as the first horror movie I ever watched. Technically, that's not true. Technically, it's As Above, So Below, but I watched them on the same night. And the Freddy vs. So, let me tell you a little story. So you might remember Lyric. Here's a picture of him. He's been in a couple of my other videos. We had never seen a horror movie before, and on Halloween night, we walked down into his basement, because we were having a sleepover on Halloween night, and his sister was watching a horror movie. She was like 10 minutes in, and that was As Above, So Below. And we watched all of it, and we fell in love with horror movies. Just both of us simultaneously were like, oh, that was amazing. And then we picked Freddy vs. Jason to watch afterwards, so I kind of credit these two movies as my first. But technically, this was the first horror movie I ever watched. And maybe that's why I like it so much, but it literally made me fall in love with horror movies, so that's why it's on my list. But, I mean, it's a great movie, besides the fact that the nostalgia. But, I mean, even though it's just, like, really important to me, I still think it's a great movie. Like, putting all my biases aside, I think it's pretty great. Coming in at number 7, I have The Black Phone. I loved this movie. It was definitely my favorite horror movie of last year. I think the Grabber is one of the most terrifying villains in any movie, but, I mean, the Ghoul. No one's going to top the Ghoul. But the Grabber is definitely up there, I think, because, he kidnaps kids, holds them in his basement, and then, like, I guess, kills them, or lets them starve, or whatever. I don't know. They didn't really explain, but they don't need to, because the movie's already effective enough. And it's really a good story outside of being, like, scary and intense. Like, the whole thing with the brother and the sister and the friend, and how Finney finally has to, like, stand up and fight his own fight for once, where he can't have his friend do it for him. I love all that stuff, and the stuff that, like, happens at home with his dad and his sister. They do a great job handling that stuff, as well as the Black Phone, which is, like, you can hear. That could be such a cheesy concept that you can talk to dead people, but they execute it pretty well, and I think it's a great horror movie, and the best of last year, which last year had some amazing horror movies. Coming in at number 6, I have Ready or Not. I think I actually did just talk about this one of my top 10 slasher movies, so I'm not going to talk about this one as much. Just go watch it. I know a lot of people don't know about this movie, but it's by Radio Silence, the people who did Scream 5 and 6. And Samara Weaving is a great actress. It's a horror comedy, so if you're not into that, then I guess you probably don't need to check it out. But it's a great movie, so I think you should definitely go check it out, at least give it a shot. What a coincidence. Number 5 is You're Next. I also talked about this one in my top 10 slasher movies. And you can just go watch it in that video, so I'll talk about it briefly here. Mainly because it's intense. It's actually got some scary moments. Erin just makes light work of every person there, and it is so fun to watch. And, like, at the end, when you think she's gonna get arrested, and then her trap finally goes off and kills the cop, like, it's got some funny moments. Even though it's dark humor, it's got some funny moments. Number 4, I have Silent House. Again, no one's heard of this movie. But actually, my top 4, they're all in my top 10 horror movies of all time. And Silent House is definitely in there. It stars Elizabeth Olsen, who may or may not play my favorite character ever. So, you take that into account, it would be a little bit biased, because Scarlet Witch is my favorite fictional character to ever exist. I mean, you can just look at my intro and how many times Scarlet Witch shows up, and how her, like, headpiece is literally in my logo. Like, look. And I've never talked about her on this channel. Oh, nope, that's not true. There's an entire video dedicated to her. Don't watch that video. Please don't. But Elizabeth Olsen, I do think, is a great actress. She's my favorite actress, not only for her role as Scarlet Witch, mainly, but not only, because she is great in Wind River. I would consider Wind River one of my favorite movies of all time. You can check that on my top 10 movies list. And also because of her performance in this movie. I believe this is her first movie, if you don't count her cameo appearance in one of the Mary-Kate and Ashley movies when they were kids. If you don't count that cameo, this is her first movie. And she does a great job. I was blown away. I thought this was just going to be like a low-budget, cheap kind of horror movie where Elizabeth Olsen got her start. And, you know, I love Elizabeth Olsen so much. I was like, okay, she's in a horror movie. I need to watch that. And it actually blew me away by how good it was. And it's kind of like Blair Witch 2 in that regards, where I was just expecting nothing, and I came out loving it. So, it's on the list. Coming in at number 3, I have Cam. Now, this one I can attribute to Dead Meat James. I watch his channel all the time. I watch the kill counts. I listen to the podcast. And I listened to the podcast episode about this movie. I didn't listen to the whole thing because they recommended you watch it before you watch the podcast episode. And typically when they do that, or they like suggest you watch the movie beforehand, typically they're right. So I went and I watched this movie on Netflix, not really expecting much from it. I mean, I maybe I'll like it, but I watched it and again, blew me away. It was incredible. It's like one of the few horror movies where the villain isn't a person or a demon or a creature or anything physically or any like thing killing people. Nobody dies in this movie. It's a horror movie because of the circumstance that she's in. She has gotten her identity stolen, and like her job is as a cam girl, so you know, if you don't want to see that, so like, cause like her job is as a cam girl, hence the name, and she gets her identity stolen. And I mean, it's like a realistic just take on like real world horrors that don't get talked about enough in movies, and it's framed as a horror movie, even though, so like this movie proves that like you don't need just like a guy or a creature to go around and just kill a bunch of people or someone to get possessed for it to be a horror movie. There are real life horrors, and they should be framed as horror movies more often. And I just realized that there's 2 movies on my top 10. I just realized that there's actually 2 movies on this list about identity theft, Us and Cam. So I like it when it's done well, apparently. Coming in at number 2, I said not all horror movies need to be about demon possessions and a bunch of people dying, but sometimes that's what you want, and that is Hereditary. Again, a really realistic take, but it's a demon story, and I think it's done really well. It's probably one of the best horror movies ever. This is, I wouldn't say it's in my top 5, but definitely my top 10. And part of the reason is because Toni Collette puts in one of the greatest performances I've ever seen in any movie, period. Not just like a horror movie, any movie ever. She does incredible. And do you want to know the sad thing? Not a single Oscar nomination. Not even like, horror movies never get nominated for Oscars, but like, not even a nomination. But she should have won this year. I don't know who won for Best Leading Actress. Guarantee you she put in a better performance. So, I'll always be a little bit salty about that. But there's also some like jaw-dropping moments. There's some horrifying moments. This is one of the scariest and saddest movies I've ever seen. Like that whole scene in the car with the pole. You know the scene I'm talking about if you've seen the movie. I'm not going to spoil it. When I tell you my jaw dropped, that would be an understatement. It was like and it stayed there for like 5 minutes after the fact, where it was just like I was reacting how the characters were. Like the guy, the brother, is just kind of like, and the whole time I was like, what did I just watch? And this movie continues to hit you in the feels, like hit you with emotional stuff. Like this is a realistic movie that does a good job making you feel sad and scared. Like there are some terrifying moments, like at the end when Toni Collette's character gets possessed and she's like crawling on the walls in the background and like banging her head on the attic, and then at the end when she like decapitates herself. I said spoiler warning, right? Like, this is one of the best horror movies of all time. But it's not the best horror movie on this list because number one, I have Trick or Treat. The fact that this movie doesn't have a sequel is insane to me. Like, if you try going to Spirit Halloween, you'll find so much stuff about Sam. It's not even funny. And this movie does not have a sequel. Sam is one of the most iconic villains in horror. Like, he instantly solidified himself in the Horror Hall of Fame, and there is no sequel to this movie. And I'm not saying I want one. Not saying I want one. Just saying there isn't one. Because typically, whenever a horror movie does good or it's successful, they need to suck it for all it's worth and get, like, a whole 10-movie franchise out of it. Even Scream, which they said they were going to stop after 3 movies, ended up with a 4th, and then a 5th, and then a 6th, and there's already a 7th one announced. Like, they're going to keep sucking that franchise dry. And Friday the 13th, you know, Part 4 was called The Final Chapter, and we know how that franchise ended up. And then Halloween said they were going to end after 2, and you know how that franchise ended up. And just all the franchises. Trick or Treat never got 1 second chance at the screen. And I'm saying they should keep it that way. I've also talked about this movie I've also talked about this movie in my top 10 movies to watch during spooky season, so if you want to check out that, I talk about it more in depth. But to basically sum it up, it's the perfect Halloween movie. It has an absolutely perfect Halloween aesthetic and a perfect Halloween feel. It's just, this movie is the holiday, is the best way to describe it. So, it's probably definitely my top 5, maybe even top 3 horror movies of all time. So, stay tuned for my top 50 horror movies, which is going to be the video I release on Friday the 13th. This one would be up there. And that is going to be it for today, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, you can hit like and subscribe and comment down below some more ideas to do after this Halloween Spooktacular, because I had to come up with 13 video ideas. I'm going to run out by the time we get to the end. So, give me some more ideas for other videos I can do. But until next time, make sure to check out the previous episodes in the Halloween Spooktacular, and make sure to stay tuned for the next ones coming. You can hit the bell notification if you are subscribed, if you want to be notified when the next ones come out. But until then, I'm Ethan Horror. This has been Ethan Horror.